I always count my captaincy in rugby as actually the first step as managing, like to actually be a manager professionally. My name is John Wright. I'm the Vice President of Mobile Publishing here at Kwalee. My role as Vice President of Mobile Publishing is actually working with the entire publishing organisation to find amazing games from high quality studios and help companies that potentially don't have the expertise or skills to get their games into the hands of millions of players worldwide by utilising our team of experts. So this could be, utilising our marketing team, building, cutting edge assets to ensure that from a marketability perspective, we can bring the lowest CPI as possible. Or it could be from a reduction perspective where we actually work with the studios to improve their gameplay and ensure that their retention and all of their gameplay metrics are improved. But ultimately, what we're trying to achieve here is to get a game into the market with the ability to be profitable as well as scalable. Ultimately, we're trying to achieve success on a few fronts, but people playing games whilst making money for our partners is pretty much the big one. My career has been quite unorthodox in the sense that I didn't actually start in gaming. My background was in finance, so I basically studied accountancy, and after a couple of years working in finance, I realised that actually it wasn't the right environment for me. I then drastically pivoted into another area where I thought I could add value. So I went into performance marketing. I started off doing this for e-coms and fashion brands, which was like the first place where I could get into utilising my previous skill set. And again, another few years later, I finally got my break into gaming, which was, the thing that I'd always wanted to do. I've always been a lifelong gamer, so this was, a very big moment for me. After nearly working for a decade, I finally managed to achieve it. So I started off in Green Man Gaming in their performance marketing team, leading the global strategy for that. So essentially doing their user acquisition and monetization. And then the bulk of my career was actually as part of Unity, but in a few different capacities. So I started off in ironSource as a senior account manager, managing all of the big accounts for Europe. I then, after a couple of years, progressed and became their director of strategic accounts, where I was managing, a huge portfolio of, again, for the whole of EMEA. And I was working with the likes of Rovio and Ubisoft and Outfit 7 and Activision and all of these huge successful companies. And then after a spell there, I went to Coda Platform as their head of growth. Again, I was managing the user acquisition, the monetization and the publishing teams. I was also part of the original team that developed the Coda Platform publishing platform, which was, to my knowledge, was the first openly accessible publishing platform in the market, and it was an amazing experience to obviously be part of that and to build out this product as well as working with the developers themselves. And then I actually joined a company called Luna Labs, which is a startup, as part of the founding team, where I was the vice president of operations. The founders of Luna were friends, and they approached me with this amazing opportunity to join a startup and build something from the ground up. So as vice president of operations, I was the first person in the business team, and it was my job to actually build out and facilitate the entire sort of client performance and client management part of the business, as well as sales and development and stuff like this. Basically, we built out that company from 0 people in my team to sort of 30 people within a year. And shortly after that, we were acquired by ironSource. So I'd obviously worked at ironSource, knew a lot of people there, went to this startup, built it, became fairly successful in that successful enough to actually for ironSource to come and acquire the business. And then over the last sort of 2 years, I've been heading up customer success for the Luna division which joined ironSource. And then obviously ironSource and Unity also merged over the last year, so I became part of the Unity org managing Luna. I've always wanted to focus on game side. I think the last 10 years, I only had a small spell where I was actually working developer side and actually having the ability to put my hands on games. And seeing as, the main reason I got into this was to actually influence games and be part of games and work with studios, I sort of went into a tangent and ended up staying there for what I think was too long. I want to be back on the creative side of things rather than the business side of things. So I was given an amazing opportunity to come in and interview for a position. Luckily enough, I've known David and Jason for sort of nearly 10 years. I was the account director for Kwalee when they launched their first game, Tens. So I have like a very big history of Kwalee, and I have a lot of respect and admiration of what's been achieved here. And after a few sort of casual conversations with Jason and the opportunity to come in and present to the board, I eventually ended up accepting an offer, and I'm now here, and I'm extremely happy that I did the move back to the good side. What makes me different is also my background. So I come from inner city living in East London, growing up on a council estate with a very modest background. Things like games were not easily accessible, so they were always big important things at Christmas, and things that we loved, and I think that's why I have such an appreciation for games. But I think the other thing is around I played sports my entire life, and I actually played rugby at a higher standard, which London 2, which is not semi-professional but pretty good. And I think that my background of playing rugby and being the captain of the team for nearly a decade was actually one of the big drivers that helped me become more managerial in essence. So I always count my captaincy in rugby as actually the first step as managing, like to actually be a manager professionally, because I was used to managing a team of like 20-25 guys, high testosterone, aggressive people. And I think if you can do that, you can definitely manage people in gaming. So I think that whole experience of playing rugby at a high standard and that sporting competitive nature gives me a different edge in terms of I am aggressive in a good way, and I like to succeed, and I think that you should always be chasing after those goals and be competitive in a positive position. What makes Kwalee different to a lot of publishers out there is the actually history and the experience of the executive team. So if we look at people like David Darling and Jason Falkus, they're industry veterans of 35 years. There's not many people out there who can say they worked on NBA Jam or created Micro Machines or built a company as successful Codemasters, which was later acquired by EA. So the historical sort of experience that we have collectively through the org is tremendous, and I think that gives us a much bigger sort of worldly view or position on games. And I think over even my 10 years in gaming, the changes that we've seen in the industry, you have to be agile, but you also have to have the experience of seeing what's happened to understand where things might go next. So that wealth of experience is very valuable. And I also think that because we all have our own internal studio, and Kwalee was famous for actually being a game developer, building its own games and having a lot of success in that area, we also have the mindset of a developer rather than a publisher. Like, we're willing to take a punt on people for face value with vision, because we know that sometimes actually getting something from an idea to an MVP to a concept to having it to launch is not an easy step, and you have to have faith and belief and put the time and effort involved to get to that stage of success. And I feel like with the experience we have from an internal development perspective, we understand that. We are thinking about the core mechanics and the metrics and such, but we also know there's a bit of magic there which we need to look on. And one of the core values of Kwalee around the development management side of things is that we all understand that we got into gaming for our love and passion of games, and I think because of that, we treat the developers with a lot of respect, because we know how hard it is to come up with concepts. We understand that these games are very much their babies to some degree, and I think that what we want to ensure is that we respect that vision, those ideas, and we work with them to try and maximize the opportunity and improve it in any way we can, using the expertise that we have in a very sizable team. It's important to me that we deal with the developer management side of things with humility and also personality. So it's a case of we want to get to know you as people, because we look at this as a partnership, and it's super important to us that we can work together for many years to come. And for that to work, we need to have a deeper relationship than just looking at numbers and saying if yes or no. The type of games that Kwalee's looking for right now is actually quite wide and quite open. So I think it's a very interesting time in the market. What we've seen is the transition from hyper casual being the most dominant, focus for a lot of companies, to in a post IDFA world, we're seeing, it's much harder to launch games. And because of that, and that adversity breeds opportunity. And what we're seeing is there is like the rule of thumb at the moment is everyone that was kind of focusing on hyper casual is now doing hybrid, which is basically deepening the meta, improving the monetization, increasing the in-app purchase, and trying to make games with fun, simple core mechanics like hyper casual, but then also deepening the monetization to increase the LTVs more like casual games. So hybrid casual is kind of the focus for a lot of companies right now, and I think from a personal perspective we see that as the one that has the highest likelihood of success, or the highest conversion rate from submission to launch. However, Kwalee are a company that's tested word games, numbers games, casual games, mid-core games. We want to be open, and we know there is a wealth of games out in market that are eager to test and will be successful. So I think we're not just looking for the red ocean here, we're going after the blue ocean. We're looking for anything that's fun and we think that we can scale and make successful, we want to get behind. And maybe it's not going to go the full distance, but we will test, we will back, and at the point where we realise that we can either do this or we can't, we'll be very honest and tell you exactly what the next steps are. The biggest highlights of my career to date, I think the one that stands out the most is obviously the success of Lunar Labs. So going into a company that has less than 10 people as the founding member and building out the business operations, and the whole team essentially that's dealing with the business of games and the tech side, taking that from just a raw product with no clients, no business, no money, and actually growing it to such a substantial size where we would be acquired by a company like IronSource and an industry leader. I think this is the difference between startup and small business compared to the corporate world, is you have to be super agile and open to do anything on a startup. So there's times where I would be on the phone to lawyers or on the phone to the accountants or signing a deal myself. And as a startup you need to have that sort of the ability to be agile, and again for us as a core team we were able to do that in the early days. We were able to start signing business, start to grow, and then before we knew it we went from being less than 10 people to over 50 people in a year. We were generating healthy six-figure sums every month, and became so attractive with the proprietary technology that we had that someone like IronSource would end up acquiring us. So that whole story of going from zero to hero or nothing to something was the proudest moment of my career. The other part which I'm most happy about, and in terms of my career and the success, is around actually launching games. So during my time at IronSource and Luna, I was part of hundreds of launches with studios from all over the world, and there is a real sense of joy and being part of something when you take a game and you see it at the top of the charts, and you see the DAO increasing from 100 users to thousands or millions of users. The one that actually I'm reminded of the most is actually a Kwalee game, which is the Plank launch. So this was around the beginning of the hyper casual stage, when we're seeing lots of studios starting to invent these caching mechanics. And with Plank it was the tap and hold. So you basically had a character, you tapped, you held, and the bridge would form, and if the bridge was the right length it would hit the other column and your animal would run across and it would be safe and you would get some points. Simple to describe, but the actual fun of making sure you nail the perfect, or going for trying to beat your high score time and time again, and depending on the level of your high score you would unlock new creatures or new characters. It was just a really fun game to work with, and the markability was some of the best I've ever seen. We were hitting IPMs of 50 plus. We also developed the first ever commercial playable, and it was like, this is a real sort of full circle moment for me, because Kwalee was the first introduction to playable and interactive ads that I ever had, and this ended up defining my career in Lunar, because that was part of the technology, was developing interactive experiences. And now I've gone full circle, coming back to join Kwalee, and I think, you know, big parts of the success of my career are actually linked to both Kwalee and Plank. Like, without actually had that experience with the first ever sort of commercially successful playable with Plank, I don't know if I'd have had the experience to go on to join Lunar, and then I definitely wouldn't have had the experience to join Kwalee after that. So it's a really nice, you know, full circle moment, and I think those successes interlink. I think if I had to give any advice to studios right now, it's, you know, keep up what you're doing. I think at the moment the industry has gone through a lot of changes. Again, post-IDFA, it's become, you know, even more difficult to launch games. And so we're seeing the number of launches on a weekly basis, you know, being much lower than they were 2 years ago. However, there are some amazing studios in the market producing, you know, super high quality games that are going to be amazingly successful. I think it's just a case of, you need to be persistent and ensure that you keep moving forward, and if you have a vision that you think is going to be successful, validate that vision but continue down a path. It's really important to have that conviction in your own people, in your own skills, in your own belief. And yeah, it's tough times right now, and I think everyone's feeling it, and we're seeing studios go under and layoffs happening on a regular basis. But keep on the path, because eventually, you know, you'll come to the point of, you know, having something that's workable. And I'm not saying don't iterate, I'm saying have a vision, come up with iterations, maybe even scrap something. It's completely okay to kill a project and then deviate to something else. And from a publishing perspective, I think this is even more sort of important right now, is, you know, a lot of studios won't have the skills or the expertise to focus on self-publishing, and that's okay. Focus on what you're good at, focus on developing the games. If you need to go to market and find a publisher like Kwalee or any of our competitors, use their expertise and experience and the sizable team and money that they have to allow you to focus on what you know is right and what's good for you. So again, it's tough times, we appreciate that, but there's people out there who generally want to help you, and people who want to get behind projects, and if the games are good, we'll get behind them.